levels, from middle school through the university level. Currently, Steve is a tenured professor at Florida State College at Jacksonville and has written, recorded, and produced two music CDs. He uses the music with his in-person programs and with his students in class. He also writes a weekly blog now in its fourth year and has a YouTube channel with more than 25,000 views. Steve lives with his wife Lori and canine companion Buddy in Atlantic Beach, Florida, where I hear it's close to 80. So take it away, Steve.
Thanks, Val. Always good to be with you. And my canine companion Buddy is right here beside me, sleeping. So he's really given me a lot of confidence here. But it's good to be with you folks. As Val said, I'm a teacher at Florida State College in Jacksonville. I'm in my 32nd year in the classroom. Still enjoying it, still having a lot of fun with it. Student success has become my niche area, but when you really think of it, my title is Professor of History. But I've ended up writing about student success, and speaking and training on student success, and I don't care what discipline we're in, it's all about student success. On page 2 of the handout packet that you had a link to, you'll be able to find contact information for me and some resources, and if you want to keep the conversation going, feel free to get in touch with me. Today we're going to be talking not so much about techniques in the classroom, but really about you. And I love this topic. I really do love talking about it. In fact, for me, the only thing that's more exciting than talking about goals is achieving goals. And so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to look at some strategies for that. And as I mentioned earlier when folks were logging in, what we're going to take a look at and the strategies we'll talk about, they're not rocket science. They are great refreshers. As I think it was Beverly had asked for, she was looking to refresh herself. And there'll be some nuggets there, I think, that you can grab onto. I'm keeping it simple, and so that we can use these immediately. And so let's get cranking. Let's move through this, and let's see what we look for here. I want to make sure that I didn't mute myself.
You're good, Steve. We can hear you. I think. Well, looks like you did mute. I'm going to unmute you.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Are
there
we
you go.
back?
You're back.
Okay, sorry about that. First day of class, every semester with my students, I start with the question of asking them what's their dream. Why are they in college? And the reality is what we're taking a look at is what are their goals? And what's the big goal? Where are they moving? What's the journey they're on? And so of the handout packet. And again, if you don't have the handout packet, not a problem. You can just do this on a couple of pieces of paper and get the handout packet later. But I'd like you to visualize, where would you like to be at the end of this academic year? Where would you like to be at the end of this calendar year? Just pick a point. And you'll see I've got 3 questions. Visualize where it is. What do you see? It's important to visualize that. What do you see? What have you accomplished? What do you look like? What do you walk like? What do you sound like? What do people see? How do you like what you see? And then from there, what would be your next step to get closer to what you see? Now, I start that with my students for this purpose because so many of my students, when they come to us, and so many people that I work with, they've got the great ability to visualize. The problem becomes to actualize, to do something. So what I then do is I say, consider that nothing significant changes in the way you live your life. You got this visualization, but nothing significant changes. Nothing. Other than you get a little older. Nothing changes. And so then the question becomes, how do you like what you see? Now, all I'm doing here is just setting the context. And when I present that, I don't care what the audience is, I haven't seen anybody that shakes their, nods their head and says, that's great. I don't want any change. I love it. And it's not a slam on anybody's life and current position, but it generally is you want to get to another spot. That's what you desire. So again, the question becomes, what's your next step? And in order to get to that next step, I go to the quote that you've probably heard. I heard it was popularized again during the Civil Rights Movement. I've heard it many times, but if not you, who? If not now, when? And I'm going to throw something else up. I just heard this on an interview yesterday. I thought it was great, a great little activity. And the question simply was, what is your story? We all have stories. And when it comes to your goals, what is your story? Is the story, I'm just too busy now. I don't have the time. I'm traveling too much. I can't possibly lose weight now because there's too much going on. What's the story that you're telling yourself? That's extremely important because that has an impact on where you're going and where you're going to end up. As I represent on this screen here, you'll see 3 circles. And in fact, because I'm going to come back to this at the end of the webinar today, you will see these circles, if you want to flip ahead to page 17 in your handout packet. But there are 3 circles. And I'm going to put up the label for the first one, and then I know, in fact, I'd love if you would in the chat room, in the chat board, tell me what the other 2 circles are, okay? Each circle has a name, one word. There's the first one, coulda. What are the other 2? Let's use the first one up. You can put in, what's the second circle? What's the third circle? Probably heard this triumvirate of, yeah, you got it, thank you, Ben. Yeah, the coulda, woulda, shoulda. That becomes such a demotivating force when we hear those words. And the reality is, if we pay attention to where they intersect, the story is, I didn't. And many times we have to just be mindful that's what happened. It's I didn't. I recommend Seth Godin's book, Linchpin. He drills down on this a little bit in a very readable and accessible fashion. But the idea, if we're moving towards goals, we got to pay attention to what are we doing and what are we not doing. So if we take a look at goal setting, one of the biggest problems with goal setting, big intentions, minimal actions, unachieved goals. Now, in a minute, I'm going to get to even more specifics or what some major obstacles to goals and goal achievement. But many times, it's the big intentions, huge. I refer to them a lot of times as just fantasies. They're not even dreams. Minimal action, and so we create a reality that is not what we're saying we want. We have unachieved goals. The goal achieving is what we have to focus on. And what we want to focus on, when we talk about personal growth, think about this, and think about your personal growth. Think about your professional growth, your relationship growth. Is it intentional? Is it accidental? Now, all of us have, to one degree or another, some accidental growth. All of us. We stumble onto a great book. We bump into and we meet somebody who's inspiring that we hadn't anticipated. That happens, and we can grow from those things, sure. But what are we doing that's intentional? That is, what are we doing that is focused on the goal? You always hear people say, you know, experience is great. Well, experience is great, but evaluated experience is even better. It's great to have the experience, but what did we learn from the experience? So the intentional growth is focused. Intentional growth is evaluated experience, and intentional growth is consistency. Consistency of planning, consistency of action. Think about this. Motivation gets us going. You might get momentarily inspired today with this webinar. All right, that might get you going, but it's the discipline that keeps you going. It's the discipline that keeps you growing. So motivation gets us going. Discipline keeps us going. That's the consistency. That's the intentionality that we have to have. So I'd like you to also, if you would, on page 4 of your handout. You can write some things there for reflection. But I'm going to want you to pop some things up in the chat board so that we all can take a look at this. And I'm going to stop and ask you to do something. I'm going to give you some homework right now. You're going to get a lot of material here in our short, about 55 minutes that we have left, 50 minutes left. A lot of material. And just like we ask our students to do, I'm going to ask you to review your notes as soon as possible. If you can just get 10, 15 minutes right after the webinar and put things together, it will help you start to coalesce the ideas and set some strategies and some actions for you as you move towards your goals. All right, having said that, would you please, on the screen, list some of the reasons why, if not you, people in general have difficulty reaching their goals? Just type them up. If you got a couple of people in the room, just type up as many that come up. All right? You got from art, you got lack of desire, motivation, have not been taught how to reach them. Yeah, we're going to come back to that. Ooh, too many projects comes from Sean. We're doing too much, maybe. Confusion, procrastination. Oh, that procrastination. Let's kick the can down the road. Yeah, Bev, the momentum, the big mo. How do we keep it going? Amy, perfectionism will kill it, won't it? I don't know if anybody can be perfect. Get distracted. Oh, yeah. All those things. And more. Let me put a few up on the screen. Difficulty in reaching goals. Too big. Too quick. You know, the too big and the too quick. Take a look. I teach a lot of, in the student success classes, I teach a lot of first semester students. So they come in, they're taking 3, 4, 5 classes, they're working a full-time job, they're a single parent. Why? Because they want to finish as quickly as possible. And they crash and burn. Too big, too quick. They need better guidance along the way. Sometimes the goals are not connected to the reality or the passion of the person making the goal. Is it your goal? Why do you really want this goal? I'm going to give you an activity in a little bit which connects you to the values behind your goals. Sometimes we're too tough on ourselves. Maybe it's because we made the goal too big, we didn't get to something that wasn't really realistic, and then we start beating ourselves up. Somebody had put this up in the chat room, chat board, that, you know, too little discipline. I have, on my business card, I have 3 words: dreams, action, reality. I mean, that really could be the whole webinar today. Dreams, action, reality. If you don't create the action, if you don't have the discipline to keep the consistency of the action, you will create a reality, but it's not the one that you're hoping for with the dreams. And sometimes it's we're too fearful. That can keep people back. Fearing failure. I've known some people extremely talented, it's as if they were too fearful to succeed. Then what? Then what were people expecting? Can I do more than my dream? Can I go further? And they start talking themselves down. And again, there's just too much going on. Not just too big for the goal, but you got too many, as somebody had said earlier. All right, so kind of the context. If we want to plan our goals, we got to first start with reviewing our goals. That's pretty basic. So here's a question for you. Again, put it up in the chat board, please. How often do you review your goals? Do you do it daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, never? You know, do you make them and just, well, if I get there, I get there? How often do you review your goals? Just post to the chat. Daily, weekly. I like Jane there, weekly and weekly. Good play on words. A few times a year, weekly sometimes. It depends on the goals. inconsistently. Good, good. Let me share a strategy with you. I started doing this about 3 years ago, called a 52-week review. Now, I take stock of my goals along the way. I look at them, basically I look at them daily, but more thoroughly on a weekly to monthly basis, and then at the end of the year, I really dig in. And here's what I do. I think most people now have some sort of an electronic calendar. Even if you don't, if you've still got a traditional paper calendar, this is fine. You can work with that as well. And here's what you do. Here's what I do. Somewhere around the second, third week in December, I print out my calendar for the year that's about to finish. And I print it out in weekly increments. In most electronic calendars, you can color code so that certain activities, like on my calendar, all my webinars are color-coded in green. So at a glance, I can look at a year and I can see how many greens I see. And then I've got activities dealing with publishing, activities dealing with traveling and speaking, activities on campus. So what I do is I print that, and then I just take them up. I pedal my bike up to a coffee shop here on the beach, and I'll sit there for over the course of a couple of days, and I just go through and I review. And I start looking at what do I see as themes that I might have lost during the year as everything was crushing down and everything was happening. And it's interesting because one year I remember specifically as I got done, one of the revelations I had was, you know what? I thought I spent a lot more time having lunch and just meeting up with friends for some social time. And while I did it, I kind of lost it that particular year. And then that became a goal for my next year. I'm going to make sure I get back in touch with that. I lost that and then there were reasons why, and so I had to go back in. But for me, it's a great review to sit down and look at the whole year. Like I said, I give myself a little bit of time during that last week of the year to go back and look at the previous 51 weeks and see what I've done, what did I like about it, and where am I going from there. It allows me to look at what I accomplished and what I left incomplete. And I encourage you to do that in some way, shape, or form. If 52 weeks is too late for you and you want to do that monthly, great. If you want to do it semi-annually, great. But it's a way that you sit down in that sacrosanct time. Sacrosanct time. Now, next activity for you. I want you to consider this semester, and really it's the first 3.5, we're into now, we'll go into 4.5 months of 2014. And think about the bright spots. And on page 6 of your handouts, you'll see I've got the title simply Bright Spots Gratitude. And one of the great things to be able to do as you're looking at planning for the next semester, the next academic year, the next year, is to sit back first and have some gratitude. What are the things that have helped you get to where you are? And I'm going to pop up onto the screen just a few of the items. But on page 6, what I'd ask you to do for yourself, not the post to the chat room, but for yourself, and then really dig deeper later after the webinar, who are the people that you're grateful for who helped you get to where you want to be, where you are? What about your skills and health? Grateful for those. Right now, I said earlier, I'm hacking from allergies, but then 7 weeks ago, I had shoulder surgery. But I'm extremely grateful for where I am health-wise. And I'm thankful for that. How about your knowledge that you have? Gratitude for that. Your talents. Those God-given abilities. You got to still tweak them and get them a little better, but those things that are great for you. It almost seems part of your DNA. How about some experiences you had this year? You say, wow, that was phenomenal, and that has helped me move forward. How about community? The community in which you live. And that could be where your neighborhood is, where you physically live, your residence, or it could be the community of scholars It could be a community in a spiritual congregation or a little league association. Just thinking about that and being thankful. And then for me, I know this ties into people, and I'm going to repeat it later, but I just think they're so important. I stress them with my students, the idea of mentors. Those people who can help us. Those people who pull us and push us. And what I would also encourage you to take a look at, and this is on page 7, in all of my programs, in all of my books and writings and in my classes, I encourage the people in front of me to pay attention to their well-being. We have 6 dimensions of well-being. They're shown on page 7. You see them on the screen as well. What are we doing to keep those dimensions in tune? What are we doing to use those dimensions to get us to our goals? And if we got one that's a little weak, or maybe even a string that's broken, how can the other ones help? Because one broken string is going to have an impact on all the others. So it's real important as we move towards our goals, we have to maintain. So our goal might be an occupational goal, the second one you see on that fretboard on the screen. But we have to make sure that the 4th one there, physical, and the 6th one, emotional, that they're in tune. Otherwise, it's going to have an impact. And you can keep on connecting all of them. Hey, Jay, when you're thinking of the past as you're getting ready to set your goals for the future, I'd ask you to think of this. When life worked, what were you doing? All right? When it worked. That is, when things seemed to click. When you seemed to have energy. When you seemed to be motivated. When you seemed to couldn't wait to get your feet on the ground in the morning. When it worked, what were you doing? Again, not to post to the chat board, but for you to reflect on page 8. And again, this is something you want to drill down on later. What were you doing? And you can go back to the gratitude. Who were you doing it with? What was the community you were involved in? What skills were you using? How about the talents? All right, you see, all of that stuff connects. What experiences? So when life worked, what were you doing? And don't give short shrift to that, because that's so, so important. What were you doing? Now you got the bright spots. Let's take a look at the not so bright spots. Again, I'm going through these quickly, folks. I want to introduce you and set the model, and then you have the homework. My wife, when she was going through school for her undergraduate degree, she had a math instructor who always told her, not just her, but the class, he said, class, you don't learn math in class, you learn math at home. And I've always remembered that, because it's a reminder, it's not just what we hear one time, it's what we keep on applying. It's that discipline. So again, I'm really encouraging you to take time and go back and drill on these over and over again and tweak them. All right, the not so bright spots. You'll find this on page 9. Again, for you, to start listing a few things. When life did not work, what were you doing or not doing? All right? When it didn't work, when things just seemed to either like you were going through molasses, seemed to be going backward, seemed to be spinning out of control, what were you doing? What were you not doing? For me, a lot of times when it doesn't work, it's I have gone and taken on too much. And I have to step back. It's not working. So for you, what is it? I'm at a point in my life where I pick and choose a lot better at what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do. But sometimes life happens, and bad things happen to good people. So just think about it. And this isn't a piece to beat yourself up. Again, it's just recognizing when was it that it was working, when was it that it was not working. Now, for both of those on pages 8 and 9, you can use the model I put on page 10 that you see up on the screen, or you will shortly. Change cycle. Very simple. Change is here. It's not going to stop. It's unrelenting. All right. That's not a rocket science discovery right there. What we have to do is recognize. We have to have an awareness. If you want to get to your goals, there has to be the awareness of what worked, what didn't work. There has to be the awareness of the mentors we've had, the mentors we need. Right? There's that recognition. Once we got the awareness, a realistic awareness, we got a plan. That's the goal setting, right? So we set the goal, we plan, we come up with all of our steps. And you know, for those of you who teach this in class, very possibly you have either taught or people taught you the SMART method of goals. And that's great. It's a great acronym. But that's only in box 2. Because we have to get to box 3, which is the execution. That's the doing again. That's the discipline. But what happens? Generally what happens along the way to the goal, there's a stumbling block. And we have to recognize that maybe a detour. Maybe we didn't plan enough. Or something happened we just didn't even foresee. So we have to recognize that, back up, and plan again, re-execute, moving on the way to enjoyment. And guess what happens? We're going to recognize again. We're going to recognize again that there's going to be a need for a change. Things constantly change. It could even be just on your campus, the change in leadership. I know on my campus, we've had three presidents now over the last 3 years. That's change. You're looking for consistency. There's a constant change. So that's an important piece. When you're setting your goals, recognize, plan, execute, and then enjoy. So you've reviewed, you've recognized where the bright spots are, the not so bright spots, you set the goal. So on page 11, I'm asking you to drill down a little further. Again, not to put on the chat room board, but for you. For you. It could be the same goal that you started this webinar with, but visualize a personal or a professional goal in any of those dimensions: social, occupational, spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional. And that's one model. You could add others. You could add financial. You could add community. I mean, whatever your title is, the idea is you're identifying what area of your life is important. So I'd like you to visualize that goal and jot it down there. Even if it's just in broad terms for this, but it could be I want to lose 20 pounds. It could be I want to finish my doctorate. I want to complete a book proposal. I want to start a little league in my community. Whatever it might be, put it there. Because then what I'm going to ask you to do, is the next step is that we got to use this particular goal as an example. So you've got this goal. It could be weight loss. It could be exercise. It could be saving a certain amount of money for a particular goal, or maybe health care, a vacation, retirement, a child into school. It could be a community program. Again, whatever it might be, visualize it, personal, professional. Could be a departmental goal. All right, now you got the goal. Now here's a great activity. I first read about it in a Jim Collins book, but I understand as I kept reading and in other materials, I do a lot of reading in leadership and business success areas, and I've seen this has been used in one form or another, but it's simply known as the 5 whys. And you will see this on page 12 of the handouts. These 5 whys help us get down to the underlying values. what's undergirding these goals that we want. And if you look at the goal you have, you write the goal in it, and I'm just going to say this because it's an easy quantifiable one right now, but let's just say the goal was I'm going to lose 25 pounds by the 4th of July, all right? You got the quantifiable that you're going to do. You've got the go-to point. You would flesh that out with the how and all the other details. But here's what you do next. You got the goal, and then the question becomes, why do I want to lose 25 pounds? And you write the answer. So if the answer is, well, I'll look better, then the next step is, well, why is it that I want to look better? If the answer was that, well, I'll be healthier for my children, for my partner, for me, okay, why is that important? The idea is you keep drilling down and drilling down and drilling down till you get to the real crux of it. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. If you go back to the slide earlier when I said why folks sometimes don't reach their goals, one of them is they're not connected. The goal is not connected to passion. It doesn't reflect what the basic value structure is of the person. This helps us see if is this really tied to something that is important to me? Or am I doing this for some other reason that's not really sustainable? And that's an important word also, sustainable. Those values help us to sustain ourselves on the way to the goal, on the way to the dream. All right, goal achieving. Again, for you, to ask yourself, what are you going to do to make the goal become reality? What are the steps you're going to take? One thing to write them. What are you going to actually do? I have a stamp with those letters. And those letters, I stamp them on the first assignment that I return to the students at the beginning of the semester. I stamp it on their midterms, and I stamp it on their final, the last paper they get back. And they actually represent pretty much the first note I give them in class and ask them to write down. And they stand for, what are you doing to get what you want? What are you doing to get what you want? So I'm going to put that to you. You got the goal. You've gone through the 5 whys, and you'll go back and you'll dig deeper on that later. All right, so you figured out why it's important. Now what are you going to do to get there? Again, it's the discipline, the consistency, the focus. What are you going to do? Who's going to help you? Powerful. What are you doing to get what you want? What are you doing to get what you want? And focus on action. Focus on action. You probably have seen that little symbol for RSS, and these are different feeds that people get for their news and updates. I use it a little differently, the RSS. When you're achieving goals, I just say, focus on really simple steps. Really simple steps. We sometimes overcomplicate things for ourselves, don't we? We really do sometimes. We overcomplicate things. And I put myself in that position at times. So it's just stepping back. Let's keep it simple. Keep it real. What are we going to do? And here's the best way to do this. And if you turn to page 13, really just 2 words to focus on. Well, 3 if you count priority. We've got to focus on our priorities. But this is something I want you to really pay attention to. When I use these terms in class, it's really gratifying when the students come to me and they'll say, one, they'll come to me at least and let me know they cannot make it to the next class. And I'll say, listen, I cannot make it to the next class. I have a non-negotiable with my child. And I love it because they're internalizing this. A non-negotiable, folks, that's something that you would not think of missing. It is something you would not think of skimping on. It is something that when the end of the day comes, you're going to make sure you address that. That's a non-negotiable. You don't let anybody get in the way of it. A negotiable, not so. The non-negotiables, those things that help us get to our goals. The negotiables, they could be fun, and they might, in the overall picture, have some impact to help us, but they can also rob us. Because sometimes what happens is our non-negotiables become negotiable. And then the reality is what we say is negotiable becomes non-negotiable. Social media isn't that important to me. Okay. How much time do you spend on it? Well, about 4 or 5 hours a day. Sounds like a non-negotiable to me. Unless you're involved in social media and that's part of your goal, is that really where the time needs to be put? So, what I'm asking you to do on page 13, with the non-negotiables and negotiables, look at your goals. And just focus on one to start with. What's non-negotiable to get you there? What's non-negotiable? Again, if it's weight loss, maybe one of the non-negotiable is, this weekend I go through the pantry and everything that is the enemy of my weight gets tossed. Because what will probably happen, that little enemy, if you let it stay in the pantry, about 9 or 10 o'clock tonight, it's going to sneak in and snuggle up to you. You get rid of it. And do that wherever you might be. Whatever the goal is. Focus on the negotiables and non-negotiables. I do an activity. You can read it in depth on page 14. I do this with my students. Again, this is real critical for all of us. We're all busy. All of us are busy. We have busy lives. And there are those days where we say, there's no way I can do anything. I'm whipped. Or the dean just dumped something on me. Or the school called and my child is vomiting and I got to go get okay. Or I got the allergies. Whatever it is. My intent with this activity is what you do is you do the 2-minute drill. Find 120 seconds. You can find 120 seconds that get you closer to your goal. Even if it is, I'm going to write a to-do list that prioritizes what I need to do in the first hour tomorrow morning. But it's something that you haven't lost focus and you're doing something. 2 minutes, 120 seconds. Got to do it now. There is a website, futureme.org, great site. You can send yourself an email in the future. It's free. And you can tweak yourself. Write the goal that you just wrote a few pages back. Go to futureme.org, type the goal, send it to yourself in a month. It'll be a nice nudge. What have you done to get there? It's a nice reminder. It's better if you have people who can do that. But this is kind of nice. All of a sudden, something comes out of the blue. Boom. Just make sure it doesn't get dumped into your junk folder. But it's a great little idea. I mentioned mentors before. Consider a board of directors. I have a board of directors. Obviously, it's not a board of directors, but for me, it's a board of directors. These are people I go to for advice, strategies. People who have skills in various areas. They're my mentors. Do you have a board of directors? Not someone who's always going to give you compliments, somebody who will also help. But think about your board of directors. I've got on page 15, it just says mentors at the top. But maybe you list 5, 6 members of that board. Who's your board? Obstacles. Okay. We're moving toward completion. I'm going to be finishing in about 15 minutes, and then Val will be putting up a survey for you. It always helps her and me when we complete this today. But obstacles. Now, we already talked earlier what can hinder us. But for you, on page 16, and this is personal, so again, I'm not going to ask you to put this up in the chat board. What's standing in your way of your visualized goal? And again, obviously, you have to be honest with yourself. What's standing in your way? Do you have a support group? Or is that a problem? We'll go back to those 6 dimensions. Are you physically able to do what you're saying you want to do? Is it an emotional issue? Is it financial? Is it time, which really, when it comes to time, it's not about time management, because time management's a myth. It's about priority management, which then brings you back to your negotiables and non-negotiables. So what stands in the way? So take a few moments when you're done and you start reflecting back today. What are the obstacles? And that would be helpful. You can look back in the past, what stood in your way. What do you think will stand in your way? You're using that change cycle. You're recognizing those things, and then you're moving forward. You're recognizing, and you're moving forward. I mean, to me, and I saw someone post this earlier in the webinar, the biggest problem for so many people is to kick the can down the road. Right? What do you want to call it? Procrastination? I'll do it tomorrow. I don't really have the time now. After the semester, it'll be less rushed. Well, after the summer, when the kids get back to school. Well, after the first month of school, things will settle down. Well, let's wait till after the holidays. All right? It just keeps going, whatever it might be. So we've got to get rid of this kick the can down the road. That's a huge, huge obstacle. And you remember, earlier I had said, you've got this idea of coulda, woulda, shoulda, but the reality is it's I didn't. Again, that's on page 17 if you wanted to fill that in. And it's a coulda, woulda, shoulda, but it's the I didn't. What I would suggest you do to address this, to operationalize it a bit, is go to a theory that's been around for years, decades. The attribution theory. You could also connect into this the locus of control theory. Excuse me. What I have on the screen, very, very simplistic overview. But with the attribution theory, what we're looking at is we come up with really 4 reasons why something happened. And that something that happened could be why we reached the goal or didn't reach a goal. And that's our topic today. Effort, ability, task difficulty, and luck. Take a moment and look at the descriptions. This is another way, folks, of going back to a previous activity in our webinar, of looking at what worked and what didn't work. I use this with students just in many ways, but let's just look at testing. Or you're at midterm. You don't like the grades you got. Okay, let's look at what are the reasons you're giving for it. Oh, the teacher's just too tough. I wasn't lucky. Well, you see, those last two are very external locus of control. Everything is out there. And you're saying you have no control. As opposed to what effort and ability I have. And if it is a task that is too difficult, what skills now, what knowledge, what mentors, where can you go to raise your level, your game? So very powerful. And I suggest that you pay attention to that as well. Effort, ability, task difficulty, and luck. Little play on words. I like to ask people, how big is your butt? 1 T, butt, not 2 T. Not looking at anatomy, looking at motivation. Do you have a lot of butts? I've done a program that basically titled that, How Big is Your Butt? And we looked at the various reasons people have. They come back with, but I might fail, but what might they say, but it's just, I've never done it before. How big is the butt? And butt is part of 3 words that you got to get rid of. You have to get rid of them. You see them on the screen. Try, but, and can't. They're demotivators. Stop them. Try is just an excuse. You don't want to try to do something. You want to do something. And if you don't do it, when a student tells me, for instance, I don't know why you gave me a D. I tried so hard. Well, a couple of problems there. I didn't give you the D. You earned it. And the other is you didn't reach the standard that was posted. So it's not what you tried to do, it's what you did. You don't pay a mechanic for what they try to do. You pay them for fixing your car, what they do. So get rid of try. Get rid of but. It's a big eraser, everything that comes before it. And sometimes can't can be code for won't. So you want to get rid of that. Listen to the vocabulary. It can be totally demotivating. All right, just a couple of things, and basically they're summaries, and then I have a call for action for you. If you look at the big picture of what we're talking about, you want to move. A goal is bringing you to some changed level. We started with asking you to visualize. Go back to that particular page where you visualized your professional goal. I believe that was page 11. This is the goal you say you want for you. And reality is we all have more than one goal. So you could have a number of these pages with your goal. I asked you to be intentional. That's focused. You evaluate your experience. You're consistent. Motivation gets you going. Discipline keeps you going. Goal setting. Goal achieving. There's a difference. Setting it, visualizing it, great. Nice start. What are you doing to get what you want? Don't forget the gratitude. The gratitude is so critically important. What can you dig into? What are the resources you have? Again, I've been thinking of my students when I'm working with them, especially my first semester students, and I know you tell your students this, and I just share, I said, here on this campus, whoop, you will probably never see as many resources as you have on this campus, ever again. So many resources for your success. And I'm just going to say to you, you've got a lot of resources out there. You've got folks, you've got experiences, you've got your health, you've got resources. It's going back to what do you have grateful for? And if you're lacking in areas, where can you go? Who's the board of directors who can help you? We did the 5 whys, so I'm asking you to go back and take a look at those 5 whys. You're identifying your underlying values. Why do you want to do what you want to do? Obstacles, and then the big thing is just keep moving. Keep moving. There's an older retired gentleman who works out in, heck, there are 2 of them. One is Bobby and one is Joe. And Bobby is close to 70, and Bobby in great shape, and he always says, motion is the lotion. And what he's saying is that by moving, I keep my body fluid. I keep it oiled. I keep it from getting stiff. I love it. And Joe is going to be 80. And he was telling me the other morning, he's in with the 5 o'clock crew, 5 a.m. crew at the gym, and Joe said, I don't have time to grow old. And I just loved it. I don't have time to grow old. And, it's this idea, we keep moving. If we don't like where we are, again, not rocket science, if we don't do anything about it, where are we going to be? Right where we are. Hoping for something to change doesn't usually make it that way. You know that. But there are those times maybe when we're just feeling overwhelmed, and that's when we need other folks, those mentors, that board of directors. So your call to action, folks, is this. Review your notes, all of them. Go specifically to pages 11, 12, 13, and 15. Those are the pages that deal with how you visualize your goal, understanding the why behind the goal. What's the basic value? So you really understand that, yes, I want this. This is something that is important, and this is why. You know it. You identify what's non-negotiable, and you can't lie about it. And I tell you what, if you say, again, if exercising is non-negotiable, but the running shoes never make it out of the closet, nah, that's becoming negotiable. That's becoming negotiable. And then page 15 is the mentors again. I can't overemphasize that. The idea of who are those folks who are going to be able to help you move forward. And really, think about this. You could be on the board of directors for somebody. Who can you help? Who can you help? All right, we've covered a lot. And we've got probably about 6 minutes left in the webinar, 6-7 minutes, I think. I know Val in another minute or two is going to put up the closing survey. But what I would love is if you have any questions or any comments, throw them to the chat board. Don't leave the room, if you would, until you get a chance to do the summary, the survey. And put any questions or comments you have in the chat. And Val, do you need me to stop sharing so you can put up your questions?
Great, Steve. I'm going to go ahead and take back control, and then I will stop sharing, and we can pull up the poll. So just bear with me here for a second, and now we're back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open up the eval. So if people wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to fill that out, that'd be great. And Steve, I'm just going to jump to your last question slide.
Oh, okay.
Which is here. And then, yeah, we have time for questions. So, Steve, you may have lost your chat window, and everyone else may have as well. All you need to do is click on the triangle to the left of the word chat, and that's going to bring up the chat box again. So if people wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to collect their thoughts and submit any last-minute comments or questions to Steve, that would be great. So, Steve, we'll just see what comes in.
Yeah, thanks to you, Art. I think Art was the one that's going to hit the golf course at some point. So keep it in the fairway, Art. They don't let me on the golf course anymore. I spend too much time with the trees, the water, and the sand. Yeah, and Robin, I had that stamp made at my local Office Depot. It's a self-inking stamp, so have fun with it. And it's great because when I put it up there on the first time I do it, the students will say, "What does that mean?" I'll say, "What were the first notes you wrote down this semester?" And they scurry back, and then they see, and then it's just a reinforcement, you know. It's a little mnemonic. And I appreciate being able to work with innovative educators. Always do. They're always wonderful. Val, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Steve. We feel the same way, especially on a Friday. It's fun to work with you.
A Friday at the beach it is nice. Nice way to go into the weekend.
Exactly. Well, I don't see any other questions, Steve, so I think we're probably safe to close. Again, thank you so much for the content, and thank everyone out there for participating.
All right. Bye-bye, folks.
Bye, everyone. I just see one last question about the recording, and we will send out